Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Denise Brown, welcome to the conversation today.
Glad to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. Where are you joining us from?
I live in Austin, Texas.
Have you been impacted by flooding?
We personally have not. Lots of friends, and it's been a rough week here in Central Texas.
Yeah.
Say that.
Yeah, I think this last little bit has been particularly challenging. So my thoughts and prayers go out to everyone who's experiencing all of that. That's really, really tough, especially this time of year. You want to be focusing on other things and having fun and, and whatnot, not dealing with natural disasters. So, well, today we are going to be talking about Denise's recent book, The Fairy God Doctor's Guide to a Good Life, a prescription for the working woman. And we were chatting in the pre-interview. I think the title's super fun. Certainly the topic is super timely and important. And so it's something that we definitely need to be thinking about as a male ally to women, any females in the audience as well, of course. How do we have a successful work-life balance? How do we live the good life both at home and in, where a lot of us spend the vast majority of our waking hours at work? So we're going to unpack some of this and explore this together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Denise's bio with everybody. Denise Brown, MD, has over 3 decades of experience as a physician, CEO, and chief strategy officer. She is a transformational leader who helps women in business learn how to prioritize and avoid stress and burnout, thought leader in self-care and working women. Brown is a graduate of the University of Chicago with training at Stanford and Vanderbilt. She resides in Austin, Texas with her husband and children. Denise, anything you would like to add by way of your background before we just really dive on in?
Well, I mean, if you read the book, you'll learn a lot about me, maybe more than you want to know. I think, I've had a really fun run, and I've had a very interesting career that has taken me down avenues I never would have anticipated. Been married for 28 years, have 2 kids I actually adore and who want to spend time with me. So that is my definition of a good life. And I'm just feel lucky that I get to be able to maybe share some of the prescriptions along the way. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that is the good life. I love it when my kids want to spend time with me and when they're not too cool to spend time with their dad,
I tell you, every now and then, a song will come on the playlist, and I'm like, oh my God, this one. How do you even know this? We got in a big argument yesterday, and he's like, oh, this song gets sampled all the time. I'm like, yeah, this song was from when I was your age. And he's like, no way. And I was like, look it up, brother. And he's like, oh, it's 1988. And I'm like, that's what I said.
That's awesome. Well, as we dive in, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about why this book, why now? Writing books are a labor of love. It always takes just so much time and energy and, part of your soul even. So what was it about this topic that you felt the need to write this book?
Yeah, well, so I ended up selling a company in the fall of 23, and I kind of, during all of that, sort of didn't follow my own prescriptions and really kind of was at my wit's end by the time it was all over. And I decided I needed to take a little time to just kind of recover. I had never taken a break. So I went straight from, high school to college to med school to residency to all of the things. Yeah. And literally for the first time ever, I was like, wow, what if I just took a little time for myself and tried to kind of, literally kind of come up for air. And I was interviewed by some magazine, I can't remember, about female CEOs, exit entrepreneurs. There's not a lot of women who have turned around and sold companies. And that was the point of the article. And in the article, the interview, she asked me, well, what's your legacy? And I was so confused by the question. I was like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Do you mean in regards to work? Because legacy and work have nothing to do with one another in my mind. And she was kind of like, okay, well, then what would your legacy be? And I was like, oh, it's all the people I've made feel better over the course of my life, whether it was as a doctor, as a friend, or as a parent, or that's my legacy. And she's like, then we just sort of got started talking, and I was kind of like, you can really follow a few rules and come up with a good life for yourself if you adhere to them. And she was like, okay, I want to know more about that. And anyway, I was like, oh, that's nice. She's like, would you please write a book? And I thought, ha ha ha. 3 months later, I was kind of bored out of my mind because I'm just one of those kind of people. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should write a book. So that's what I did.
Nice. Very
Yeah.
good. And let's go ahead and dive on in, in terms of the core components here. You've talked already just about the life well lived. You've referred to it. Obviously, that's the whole point of the book. Anything particular in terms of kind of your diverse background that you think has led to your or influenced your perspective around workplace well-being?
Yeah. So, I went to med school and I lost my mom when I was a third year medical student. I had actually
Mm,
diagnosed her. I was learning my physical diagnosis skills and I practiced on her and I heard this sound in her heart and I didn't like the way it sounded.
mm,
One thing led to another and sadly she died from a horrible side effect of one of the medications. This was at a time before we had the kind of immunologic medications that we have available to us today. And it was really horrible, but it was also really great because it sort of quickly gave me the ability to sort of not mess around with the small stuff, to recognize that life is short and we're only here once, right? And everyone
yeah.
says that. But really kind of taking that to heart helped me make some pretty bold choices. As a resident, I was married. I finally caught up with my husband. We went back and forth across the country in
Mm,
different, school settings and whatnot.
yeah.
Actually made the decision to leave Stanford in the middle of my second year of residency because he had taken a faculty position at Vanderbilt. And I was like, oh, just living on my own. I took care of a lovely woman named Claudia who was dying of leukemia that had failed several bone marrow transplants. And she asked me one day, like, why are you here? Like, why are you not with the person you love? And I was like, oh my gosh, you just blew my mind. Like, so what if I was, and it led me to ask the question, like, what would it take for me to spend some time here at Stanford, but then some time at Vanderbilt? Is that possible? What would that look like? And honestly, my program director at Stanford was like, no one's ever asked us that, but
Mm,
let me see
mm,
what I can do. And I think that was kind of the first of many kind of bold choices where I was like, what if I just, number one, was brave enough to ask, but also just ask someone to kind of explore a possibility with me
yeah.
to
Yeah.
come up with what might work. And I think that's been kind of the through line of all of the things that I've done. Like, what if we just thought about that? And what if I could go out of my way to help you achieve whatever it is that you're searching for? And I think that's really a unique way to manage people, to be open to that possibility. There's no one way to do anything. What if I just listened to you and we came up with an answer that worked for both of us? So I think that's kind of the overarching theme is to figure out what it is that you're looking for, what actually really matters to you, to be brave enough to go after it, but most importantly, ask other people for help along the way.
Yeah, I love that. And what do you think it is? Like, why aren't people willing to even ask the question? Some people don't think to ask, but a lot of people have the question, but they're scared to ask it, right? So, like,
No,
what do you think
yeah.
that is?
Well, and I don't know if this is a man-woman thing or what. I think a lot of women in particular are afraid to kind of speak out loud about all of the other things that they're trying to handle in their lives. And I think men are too. It's considered somehow a sign of weakness. I'll give you an example. I was with some folks at a pretty large consulting firm doing like a book club, and one of the women said, yeah, it's just really frustrating. It's so hard for me to get everything done in the morning and get out the door and make it to the all hands meeting every morning. And I said, well, what time is your all hands? And she's like, oh, it's at 8:30. And I said, oh God, that's a tough time. You try to get kids to school, all the
Yeah,
things. She's like, yeah, it's super stressful. And it really just, it makes every day kind of start off difficult. And I
right.
was like, well, did you ever ask to move the meeting? And she was like, I'm sorry, what? I was like, did you ever just sit down with your boss and say, hey, the 8:30 is a really challenging time. Would it be possible for us to move this? What other times might work for you? She was like, oh my God. I said, because I guarantee you are not the only person who's struggling with this, right? There's probably like 17 other people in the room that have the same problem. Like, what if you were the one who was bold enough to ask? And so I did ended up getting an email back, and she's like, "Oh my God, we asked to move the meeting at till 9, and this half an hour has completely changed my life." It's like victory.
That's
Um,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it's just cool. I mean, the person leading the meeting had no idea that it was a problem. Like, and it wasn't like they were doing it to be, purposefully, malicious. It was just like, oh, I had no idea. So years had gone by that this poor woman was like stressed out. Like, wow, why didn't I ask earlier?
Well, and like you said, chances are it was not just her. Chances are there were a bunch of other people. And I've felt that same thing too as a father of six, and juggling with my wife's career. And like most of the time I'm on the drop kids off at school duty.
Yep.
And yeah, it is stressful anytime someone sets one of those early meetings. And so the fact that she did that, there's probably a whole bunch of other people that benefited from it. There's no good reason why that time was set other than it just was and people just continued it. And there are so many things like that in our
Yes.
daily lives, right? That we just
Yes.
sometimes if we don't stop to think about it a little bit and challenge some assumptions, we don't even realize that maybe this is something that can be adjusted. And then, like you said, a lot of times we do just have that fear of like feeling like people thinking we're needy, like we can't handle it, like all those sorts of things. You just want to be able to show up for your team, for your boss, whatever. And I mean, I suppose there are bosses out there that would view it as weakness, but they're kind of probably jerks. So like, why are you
Yeah, I'm
gonna
like,
care?
ew, I don't want to work for that person. But it's very primal, right? You don't want to stand out from the tribe. It's just, that's we are communal animals. Like, we live in and function in groups. And so to kind of step forward and step apart from is nerve-wracking, but it's one of those things that it's a muscle you can flex and you can practice, and then it gets easier and easier. And I think the way that you ask these things is very important. So you're not like, we need to move this meeting because it's really inconvenient for me.
How dare
It's
you?
yeah, it's like, what would it look like if we moved this time of this meeting? Would that be possible? And so you're just like, I love the word possible, because then what, somebody's gonna be like, no, it's impossible. Like, I mean, you're just sort of like, I think words are very powerful. And it's a really nice kind of way to sort of set the scene for how someone kind of deciding to
Yeah.
walk down this path with you, instead of, setting up a roadblock for you. So I use that all the time, and I actually think it's really effective for advocating for yourself. But yeah, you play around with it, see what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things you talk about in the book is, well, kind of challenging the idea of work-life balance. And there's different terms used, like life-work integration, work-life balance, of course, is probably the most common one. There's different ways of framing it, different ways of looking at it. What do you think is wrong with, that the prevailing ideas around work-life balance? What's outdated about that, and how should we update how we think about it?
Yeah. So my chapter 2 is there is no balance.
Hmm.
I think when you conceive of work-life balance, you're setting yourself up to feel bad about yourself, period. Like, you're setting
Hmm.
yourself up for failure. There is no such thing. You cannot find this mythical land. It does not exist. It also
I've heard
implies,
this especially in talking with women leaders. I feel like that's especially a hard thing. Like you feel this mom guilt perhaps or whatever, right? Like in ways that I know my wife feels it, and I don't feel it the same way. I just don't.
yeah,
Even though we largely share all of the load and all of that, I
totally.
don't have that same socialization, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Part of it is the kind of cultural milieu that we're sort of steeped in. Um, and I think it's particularly difficult for, high achieving women. They think that they're supposed to find this balance, and just the whole idea, right, of balance is one goes up, the other goes down. Like, that doesn't work for me. Like, I just refuse to acknowledge it. I also think that you can't not bring your whole self to the party every day, right? I mean,
Mm,
no matter where you go, there you are. Like, it's not like you would
right.
just park all this stuff outside. Like, I don't care what kind of compartmentalization capabilities you have. If you had a fight with your spouse in the morning, you're gonna be grumpy probably when you hit the office. I mean, we are who we are. So to try to kind of separate those things, I think, is very difficult. And I think
Mhm.
we spend a lot of our energy trying to do that instead of just being like, here I am. Instead of saying to your boss, yeah, 8:30 is really tough. I've got the kids. Would it be possible to move? And then they're like, oh yeah, you know what? It's actually not so great for me either. I kind of, sure, that's something, all of those sorts of things. I think when we acknowledge that we're all whole people, all the time, then somehow it just becomes no longer taboo. And I think, maybe one of the small benefits of the pandemic was that, we did get a little
Yeah.
more insight into people's lives and homes and how they're kind of juggling all these things and having a little more compassion. And I think that's kind of like maybe that tide has ebbed somewhat. There was an article in Wall Street Journal the other day, and it was like, if you're looking for work-life balance, don't apply here or something like that.
Right.
And
Like, oh, good
literally,
note, because I'm not.
I mean, it literally is like, you think that's an overrated concept? You're hired. It's and I guess maybe because as a resident, and I was a resident a long time ago, so it was before the rules, right? So I might be at the hospital for 72 hours or something like that.
That's
And
nuts.
it was nuts. And then, I had all these friends whose marriages fell apart and all, like you can only focus on one thing at a time. And so I just think it's really difficult when we are spending all this energy on this concept of balance instead of just being like, I need to leave at 3 o'clock today, but I will get back on Slack or whatever it is at 7, and I'll crank through my day. And that's sort of what I ended up coming to when I started a practice. So I finished my residency and I started a hospital practice, so very intense, sick people in the hospital.
Right.
And I had little kids. And the thing that mattered the most to me was that I would be able to like put them in the bathtubs, read them a story, and say goodnight. And what I would do is I would literally go all through the hospital, ICU, the med surg unit, the ER. I'm running home for half an hour to put the kids to bed. I'll be right back. Is there any issues that are currently happening that I need to be aware of? No, all good. We got you. Go on, go on. Like, so all of these people kind of helped me raise my kids. I'd race home, do my thing, come right back, and I'd work till 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was fine because that little part that mattered the most to me, like I was able to kind of carve that out. And so I think balance means, some people think it's equal time. I mean, I don't know. Like everyone's got a weird definition. For me, it's like, what are the 3 things that matter the most to you and what actual time do they take? And so for me, it was always, I need a half an hour to myself. I just have to just either read or just be or whatever it is. Like, and it's what I do in that half an hour has changed over the years. I need a
Sure.
half hour with my husband and I need a half an hour with my kids. I don't need massive amounts of time. I need like real good quality nuggets of time. And then everything else, all the other chaos can kind of ensue.
Hmm.
But like you can't tell me you can't find an hour or 90 minutes in the course of a day. Like most of us doom scroll for longer than that. So
Right.
you know what I mean? Like you just have to be really kind of particular and savage about it. And I don't know what that is for you. It's different for everybody, but for me, that was it. And I've always kind of stuck to that. And then I can just, I can go all day. That's fine. But I know that I'm gonna have that time. And that's what really matters to me. And then, it pays dividends down the road, right? You don't know what kind of parent you are until your kid's 30, I guess. But
Right. Yeah, and you alluded to it. Like it's hard, during the pandemic, I think people were trying to be empathetic to various situations and trying to be flexible. In part, you had no choice. You had to be, right? But and so it did open people's eyes. It allowed us to challenge some long-held assumptions, and realize that certain ways we'd done things just probably don't need to happen that way, don't make sense anymore. People's priorities shifted a little bit, in many cases, about like how much do I really am I willing to commute and spend 2 hours
right,
on the road every day, or like
right.
whatever. There's a whole list of things that kind of came out of the mental reset and exercise that happened during the pandemic. But now, you have return to office mandates. You have literally companies that are posting those types of statements that you mentioned, basically saying, give your life and soul over to the company or don't bother applying, which is kind of nuts, but like, at least they're straightforward
Hey, at
about
least
it.
it's out there, right? At least I know what I'm getting into, eyes wide
Right.
open, then hey, if I
Yeah.
if I say yes, then I can't complain about it later.
Yeah. And so like you said, I'm not the biggest fan of work-life balance as a phrase because many of the reasons you said, and so some people use like life work integration. I like that because it puts life first. I like it
Mhm.
because we're talking about integrating rather than balancing.
Mhm.
But there's probably ways to pick that term apart too. Ultimately, I'm not sure, like, people are going to use terms to try to define this, right?
Right.
To try to explain it. And I'm not sure that matters as much,
I don't
whatever
think it
term
does.
people use.
Yeah.
Uh, but really, like, do you know what your priorities are? Like you said, what are the three things? Like, you can't do everything. You just can't. And so, maybe there's a time in a season where you're pretty much going to be head down focusing on one thing.
Yep.
I would imagine residencies kind of like that.
Yeah.
But there are going to be other times where you can have a little bit more of this integrated approach where you maybe your three or four priorities.
Yep.
But if you're trying to do 10 things at once, chances are that's gonna lead to burnout. You're not gonna be able to sustain that because we're human, and you just
Absolutely.
you
And
just
and
can't.
the problem is that there are lots of things that we pick up unintentionally that we don't even realize. It's almost like unconscious. Either it's that sort of pressure to be like, oh, well, I'm at work a lot, so I should definitely volunteer at my kid's school, or whatever. All of these things, like, they kind of start to accumulate, and if you don't kind of take an honest inventory, before you know it, they're all like kind of looming over you. So, I'm definitely a person who says yes to pretty much everything, but over
I
the
am too.
of my
Yeah.
life, I've learned to say yes. And I'm going to need to understand a little bit more about that. And I need to know what the kind of time requirement is. Like, you start to ask more directed questions, I guess, the older we get, because I do think the world is fabulous and it's really fun to say yes to things, and you should, only if it still fits within your kind of confines. And like you mentioned, like, you can't have 10 priorities. Like, that goes against the definition of the word. So I feel like integration is a nice word. I just don't feel like you can separate work and life. It's just life. That's all we got. It's our life, period.
Yeah. I
So
was literally in a presentation, this was a couple years ago, where someone was presenting their strategic priorities for the year, and it was a list of 20 things. And so, I mean, that's not really what we're talking about today, but it's illustrative of, like, the creep is true. Like, and it's not like any of those things that were on that list were bad things or that they weren't good things that we should try to do, but, like, you just literally can't focus on all that. And we tend to do that too in our personal lives and our work lives. I'm the same way. Like, I tend to say yes. I like to be collaborative. I like to work with people on stuff. I like to do a variety of things, but there's literally only so much I can do, and eventually, not just shortchanging myself and my family. I'm shortchanging them, right? The
yep.
people I say yes to when I really can't put my whole self into it. And you mentioned that earlier, like, bring your whole self, like, whatever it is, whatever your priorities are, bring your whole self to what you're doing and do the best you can in that thing. And
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 then
and
that's it.
those areas of focus will shift based on
Yes.
life stage, career stage, like, whatever. Like, there's a whole bunch of reasons why that will shift over time, and that's okay too, right?
Yeah. And I think when you do that and you kind of keep yourself open to these possibilities, then you end up having a much more interesting journey, whether it's personally and you meet fabulous people, or it's professionally, take an offer that you never would have even contemplated because it sounds interesting. And no, you don't have to have it all figured out ahead of time. You can learn as you go. It just starts to build a kind of a momentum of, I think, curiosity and compassion and, like you said, collaboration, where you're just kind of like, here we all are together. Like, what could I do to be a benefit to you? And what can you do to be a benefit to me? It's not transactional. It's just, here we all are. And you see that with a lot of the flood, hill country stuff that's happening right now, where people are just like, I don't have much to offer, but here's what I have, and I'm going to come to help you. And I think that's really kind of, for me, that's the definition of having a good life. And it's an interesting career, and it's a family that you care about, and it's friends you make time for, and it's choosing yourself every single time. Because when I'm making choices based on my priorities, that is the ultimate in self-care. Everything else falls in line.
I love it. I love it. Well, I note the time. I need to let you go here in a minute. But before we wrap up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your book, and then give us the final word for today.
I love it. Well, my book is all the usual spots: Barnes& and Noble, Amazon, Google, iBook, whatever. It's a fun read. I did the Audible, so that's also hilarious. I hear if you read it, if you put it at 1.5 speed, it's like I'm talking to you, and it takes about 3 hours. So I purposely wrote a book that was short and sweet and packed with stuff. I hate those books where like the beginning's good, the end's good, the middle, you're just like, really? So I think it's a lot of fun to listen to. It was a lot of fun to write. Um, I'm on, the usual things, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm not good at TikTok, so I don't do that. But and you can find me on my website, Denise S in the middle, Brown MD. Yeah, just buy the book, have fun listening to it, share it with your friends, and most importantly, come up with what the good life is for you. And my closing thought is, you can have it all, but you cannot do it all. So,
Mm.
it takes friends, and it takes a village. And sometimes we have to build that village on our own.
I love it. I love it. Denise, thank you so much. It's just been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Denise can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.